Okay, it is 10:08, and we are reconvening the public meeting 8.2. We're going to move on to 8.3, discussion consideration to approve teacher contract language for SY 25-26. Dr. Mahorn.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm on the wrong page. So what you have are lots of different contracts, but they all have basically the same wording. The conversation that I'm hoping you all will have today about this will be about the liquidated damages. So each contract has a clean version that has liquidated damages and another version that has no liquidated damages. So it would be up to you all as a board whether you want to keep what we have for liquidated damages right now, if you want to amend it at all, or if you want to completely take liquidated damages out. We're ready to do whatever you all decide as a board.
Okay, Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you. Remind me, right now it's 2,500.
It is.
Is the liquidated damages.
It is.
And that is the higher amount of, I think, is that the maximum amount, or is that the higher amount that most of our peer districts are using?
Yes, that is. Most of our peer districts are doing the 2,500. I have not come across a district that's doing more than 2,500.
Okay, what about less?
There were 2 districts that were doing 1,500.
Okay.
And I mean, it could be anywhere in between. It could.
All right. Personally, as much as I said in the past, I support teachers. I want them to remain in the classroom all year long. Liquidated damages, I think, is needed. Maybe not the 2,500. Maybe we can consider as a board reducing that. And possibly even talk about discussing. Right now we have 4 criteria, correct, that somebody could fall into.
3, health reasons, spouse gets transferred, or promotion.
Okay. Maybe we can have a conversation about whether we need more exceptions when somebody breaks their contract and leaves. But I think it's a good conversation to have. I know teacher contracts are going to be going out pretty soon, hopefully, and so that's why the rush is we need to get these, we need to find something here, so I don't want to hold this up, but I do think it's still necessary that we have them, and but I want to hear from the rest of the board.
And I was just going to say, if everybody just kind of wants to give their initial thoughts, and then we'll have, a more open discussion, if that's okay. Ms. Schmidt.
So my initial thoughts are that I am not in favor of liquidated damages. I don't know that they did what the intention was. It didn't prevent teachers from leaving, even though they had to pay out the money. In terms of if we needed to keep them for some reason, looking at some sort of prorating potentially, if a teacher leaves on September 1st and they pay $2,500, or they leave on May 1st, they still have to pay $2,500, but they've fulfilled most of their contract at that point. I don't know that feels like it's doing the same thing either. Like, it feels like the teacher who stays longer is getting penalized for actually fulfilling more of their contract at that point. So I don't like them in general, but if we're going with it, I would like the idea of discussing a prorating of some kind based on the amount of time they fulfilled within the contract, and potentially reducing. This came up in a previous meeting, I think, but the way that the board is now responsible for approving or not approving the liquidated damages, but we don't always have all of the information. So I don't always necessarily feel comfortable making that decision. So we would either need to be fully informed of why someone is leaving, or that decision should be moved to someone who is fully informed, so that it isn't just, we get a list with the name and we don't really know anything else, and then we're expected to make that call. So those are my initial thoughts.
Mr. Cinciani.
I agree with a lot of what you said. So this is one of the things I struggled with on voting. I was voting with the liquidated damages, right? Because it's a contract, and they signed it, and so that was my biggest hang up, was like they agreed to it when they originally signed it, and so that was like part of my issue with not waiving them. I did mention also during one of the boards of like the prorating thing. I would support that. Like if we go with it being a prorated, because like you said, it's not fair for somebody that is there for a day, because we're gonna have to get a sub. I mean, it's not fair to us at the same time, because we call it a contract, but if there's nothing really protecting us, and how's it a contract? That's part of my hang up, but if we want to look at prorating it, I would support that.
Okay. I really struggle with the liquidated damages because, I don't think it was effective, right? We had more teachers resign than ever before. We were up to 20 at this time last year versus 4 when there were no liquidated damages. So I don't think it didn't achieve what we were hoping it to achieve. The other thing that I want the board to consider is that when teachers leave, they don't get their performance pay. So they get their performance pay, I think you said 20% in June, or no, excuse me, 20% in December, 40% in June, and then 40% the following August. So, teachers that leave in October, they're losing $5,000. They're already losing money. And then if they leave before the end of the year, because it's 5,000, correct?
Total, yep.
Total, okay?
Yeah, it could be more sometimes, just depending on how much is in the business office. It can talk about if we have a huge classroom site fund. The last approved amount was 5,000, but it could come back to the board and maybe be 6,000, but right now it's 5.
So if they resign at any point during the year, they're only getting 20% of their performance pay because they're getting it in December. That's if they stay through December. So,
Yeah.
If they leave at any point, or they just decide, which I kind of have a hard time with, if they just decide at the end of the year to go work somewhere else, if they resign on May 23rd, they don't get even that June performance pay, correct?
Right. If they resign anytime before the end of their contract.
Right, so even if they don't sign their contract, right, they decide they're gonna go to a different district that makes more money, they're still losing out on 80%.
No, they would still, because they did their whole year. They'd still get that check because they did their whole year. I'm almost positive. Yes, they did their whole year. Yeah, because I don't think there's not
Can you
even-
come to the mic?
I don't think there's a month anymore. Yeah, there's. Third.
This year, they do receive the June and the August payment as long as they fulfilled their contract.
Okay, so if they go work for a different district,
If they stay till May 23rd this year, but don't sign a contract for next year, they still get the June and August payment.
they do.
So
Oh,
they
okay,
still
good.
get it.
Okay, because,
They fulfilled their contract.
okay, and so we're paying them, do you pay them then in May for all that extra money that the
No,
other?
They still get the June and August payment.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
they are still considered active, like, in the payroll system until that, and so we don't
Okay.
close them out until basically mid-August.
And just to repeat what you said, to make sure everybody heard it, if a teacher would leave in February and they got their performance payment in December, they have to pay that back.
Correct.
Okay, just so that, because you were walking.
Yep, sorry.
I just want to make sure everybody heard that part.
Yes.
So they would have to pay that back plus their $2,500 to get out of their contract.
Correct.
So, yes, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So, to kind of sum up, with what Mr. Kenyon said, I don't want to hold up teacher contracts tonight. I do not want to do that. I'm not really comfortable moving forward with 2,500 because I do think that there already are like built-in consequences for teachers not fulfilling their contract. So I would like to see if we could agree to a lesser amount because I do think there is the built-in, $5,000 is a lot of money.
Would you be okay with like the higher number at first and then dropping it as they go through like the months? So you're just trying to do, you're not being very like negotiating at all.
I think $2,500 is a lot of money, and we charged people that last year in like May and April. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I think so you're saying $7,500. That's a lot, and only teachers have to do this.
Well,
like
it's
not administrators. Administrators leave; they don't have to pay. They get all their vacation time.
So it's not 75. So if you come and you only work for a month, you're not paying back 7,500 because you didn't get that performance check yet.
If you're a first-year teacher, but if you worked last year, and then
It's
you're
yours. You already filled that year out. You're starting a new year now.
So you're not paying it back, but she's saying that you're leaving it on the table essentially. Like you start the year thinking I'm gonna make $57,000, but 7,000 or 5,000 of it is performance pay. If you don't fulfill your contract, you're paying $2,500 to get out of it, and you're leaving that $5,000 on the table that you thought you were going to make. So it is still a hit. That was in your plan. You were going to make that.
Well, your
But
plan
I
was
think
to
that's
stay
what
and
it
work for the whole year too.
is. You're not wrong.
But isn't the
planning through.
performance pay from the previous year? Like, don't teachers submit their goals and they're earning and they're getting paid for the?
They do it ongoing. It's ongoing.
But
So,
they
like,
have to complete their goals and stuff to get the performance pay. So they're really completing it for the following year.
But they are getting paid in that year. So anybody finishes their contract that year, even if they go to a different district, doesn't matter like what the goals they said were for next year, they're still getting their performance pay for that year.
What if, throwing this out there, we lower the liquidated damages amount to begin with and add in the prorating? So you are still expected to fulfill your contract. There is a penalty for not fulfilling a contract. However, if you leave on September 1st, you're going to pay more than a teacher who stays till April 15th because they have fulfilled more of their contract. There's still a penalty. It is just prorated. I feel like that's something that I could support because it kind of hits all of the bases. It's not overly penalizing people. We're not charging people in May what somebody in September had to pay. And we don't have to be the highest district around in the liquidated damages amount. So that's me trying to
One
be
thing
in the middle.
you did say earlier that I totally agree with is I think we mentioned that it should be HR that makes that decision because they're after we set the parameters, like they're the ones that have all the details. I don't think it should be coming to the board because we just don't have the personal details of that stuff, and sometimes we shouldn't know it.
I just think it needs to be really clear because that, and thank you for coming back to that because I kind of forgot to mention is that I think the way that it's set up now is it's written as it's written currently is it's the board's sole discretion, but the HR is providing a recommendation. And so I feel like it kind of taints it being our sole discretion. And so I do think we need to be very specific. And, the question about honoring the contract is like, if they get a promotion, I think there's a lot of what does that mean exactly? And, is that okay for somebody to not fulfill their contract? Certainly like illness, their spouse got a job that, you know, is out of their control. You know, those kinds of things I think are very typical, but I think we need to, you know, be specific in the criteria. And, you know, before we continue the conversation, just because we're going to potentially be changing a significant part of the language if we allow HR to make the decision, like, does it need to be reviewed by legal again before we, you know, issue a contract tonight?
So I think we might have to do it. I think if we agree on everything, I think we might have to approve it at this on Monday or whatever. If we go Monday,
So,
just so it can be rewritten.
Well, if it's not decided tonight and the board wants to give direction, then we could have Clyde work with Dr. Mohorn on language, and if we do have a meeting next week, we could bring that back, and then we could still make the March 15th, right?
We just would have to approve the language first, like we're doing tonight, and then approve the issuance of the contracts, just the order.
Well, I just mean tonight, if they give us direction
Yeah,
on the
then
language.
we'll change it and
I just don't
work
want to
with-
delay.
I'm just asking Mr. Dangerfield if you could help us, you know, if we're changing not just the number now, right? Now we're changing who's going to make the determination of applying or not applying liquidated damages, and potentially the criteria, because it's not written in the contract. The criteria is not in the contract. Is that something that you think, you know, should be reviewed by legal before we do that, since, you know, we're not just changing a number at this point?
Yes, if you'll make sure I understand exactly what
I-
you want it to look like.
I think so, yeah. If the board can come to a consensus on a clear direction, and then he can work on that language, then we bring the language back to you. So I would say yes, Mrs. Zimmerman. I think that
I
would be.
agree. I just need to make sure I understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
so,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
sorry. So I'm okay with if we reduce it, say that $1,500 amount that the other couple districts are doing, and then prorating it. The question is, prorating it how? Is that going to be by month? Is that going to be by day?
I think
I was thinking month. Ms. Schmidt, what were your thoughts on that? Since you kind of brought it up.
I mean, in an ideal world, you could do it by day, because if you leave on October 1st, that's less time in than if you leave on October 28th, you know, like, and so to make it as fair and just as possible, like if you prorate it by the number of days in the school year, and you worked this many days, that is a percentage of the school year, that is the percentage that you have to pay back.
That would be an easy one to calculate, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the easiest and most, like, everybody knows exactly what it will be then. If you leave on this day, it's this percentage of the school year.
That would be easy to write. Yeah, can do that.
So I'm okay with that.
So we're saying start at 1,500, prorate it by the day, figure out the language, have HR look at it.
Yeah, and that's to give HR direction.
And
My
then-
thought is it's to give HR direction to make the decision whether the liquidated damages apply or not.
And then I would say just some clarity to what is written in here as far as what are those situations, or what is language, like you said, moving, or,
And maybe it should be a policy and not in the contract.
That part
Yeah,
was in policy.
Isn't it currently a policy?
It is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not in the contract,
No.
correct?
That means, so would we be able to,
no, I think it's the opposite, Mr. Dangerfield. I think it's only in our contract. I don't think it's in policy.
The conditions aren't in the contract,
What's that? Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true,
the-
that's true.
but the conditions, the criteria, whatever you want to call it, is not in the contract.
That's in a policy.
In policy.
Okay, so I think, you know, we could make a motion. I mean, I think we're going to have to table it right now, but I think we could make a motion. If we're going to bring it back in a meeting, we could bring the policy back too, so that we're doing it all at the same time.
yes, we can make a motion to table with instructions to them to do stuff.
Yeah.
You can make a motion to do what we just talked about, the prorated, the lower number. You can
Okay,
do
I
that.
just have a couple of other things that are like housekeeping things in the contract that aren't, and I just want to say, like, I'm okay moving forward with what we've discussed. But there's a signing bonus that's listed, and I think, you know, I was thinking we were going to get to it in the study session, and we didn't, because it is a budget consideration. And I, you know, want to be the first one to say I want to give teachers a signing bonus. Like, I don't want there to be any question of that. But I think as a board, we have to discuss the budget implication, and are we going to do that? And so I don't know if we want to you know, either we can discuss it now or in a couple agenda items, because it's part of the contract.
Yeah, I'm okay with it right now. I mean, we're looking at, I mean, unless administration comes with some other ideas, I mean, that's a significant thing that staff look at when they're coming to look for a new job, is a signing bonus, and I don't want to cripple our ability to hire if we find good candidates, and that's something that could get them in the district. I think I just don't know if we want to.
So Stephanie, or Dr. Mohorn, so the signing bonus, just remind us what the signing bonus has meant in Liberty. What are the implications?
Well, I can tell you what it's meant in the past changed because of what legislation did to us this year. So what it's meant in the past is the $5,000 if you return your contract within the first 5 business days, because all school districts are competing to get contracts out early. Well, now legislation changed and you cannot get them out before March 15th. So now the purpose of a signing bonus would be different, because no one can send them out at different times or send them out any earlier. That's the purpose it's been in the past, to get people to sign within that first 5 days and get them locked in, because we want to get our staff. Now, none of the districts, none of us can send them out anytime before that. So if you were wanting to do a signing bonus, it would be truly just a bonus to give them a bonus. It wouldn't be to really try to get our contracts back fast.
And it was 500, right? Not 5,000?
Oh, gosh, it was
Okay,
500. Did I say 5,000? No, it was not 5,000. No.
It used to be.
500, no.
Before the legislation changed, districts were just kind of trying to game the system to try to secure their teachers and make sure the teachers had the reassurance. So you had a lot of signing bonuses. And now, in essence, the playing field has almost been equaled a little bit, because now you can't put out the contracts till March 15th. But, so $500 within the first 5 days in
5
Liberty.
business days,
5
yeah.
business days.
Yeah, it's really for our current employees. We're not offering them to other people, correct?
No, it is for our current employees only.
Okay, so it's almost, I see it as like a thank you, right? Thank you for continuing.
Is that standard practice at the districts around us? The
It is, and
$500
especially
signing bonus?
when there was ESSER money. So
Sure.
ESSER money plays into this as well.
Okay, thank you.
Is why this was done.
So, in the budget interest form, it's about $80,000 is what it was calculated. So if you think about that, that's, more than a teacher's salary. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying we're going to have to cut somewhere else, and I just want us to be fiscally responsible and just have this conversation, even though it's difficult.
I would just hate for our teachers to be the.
Oh, Mary.
Sorry, can I make one other point, that our teachers with the 4-day school week actually get almost 30 days to sign their contracts, where other districts are 15 business days. But with our 4-day, it does extend that. So that $500 signing bonus is another incentive to try and get them to sign in that earlier window, instead of taking that full 30 days to sign.
And again, if that's a direction for us to look into, like Vice President Zimmerman is looking at, then we have some time to look at the budget implications and bring that to the board even on Monday, if that was to be included in the contract. Because I think the 80,000 was about right, if I remember from the list. That's what it was.
What were you going to say? Sorry.
I would just hate for our first decision as a board to cut money would be take the money out of the teacher's hand. But that's not going to sit well with me.
Me neither. We've already seen, people are upset about instruction coming down in the district, and that would play into that, right? It would further draw it down. So I think it's a good idea just to look at it, but I personally, right now, I can't support it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm just, we're gonna have to cut in a different area, so I just, yeah. And then the continuing teacher contract, it has, like a signing bonus that's blank. Do they get a signing bonus?
That was just overlooked. That was just overlooked. It was supposed to be $500.
Okay, okay.
So we need to correct that.
Yeah,
We need to put
yep,
the
it
phone
was
in.
just,
Okay, so does somebody want to take a stab at the motion to provide direction, but then
and make sure it's clear for me.
to table it, because we're
Or
not.
can we make a
Well, I
motion
mean,
to
we could
approve
just
with
table it
change?
with the direction,
Yeah.
right? You just have to be understanding of what the direction is. But
But-
that doesn't have to be a motion.
I thought that we thought that it needed to be reviewed by legal because we're not just changing a number.
So, Mr. Dangerfield, what do you think? Do they just give the direction?
Yeah, they've done it.
Okay.
And we'll bring it back to the next board meeting.
So do they need to make a
But we
motion?
still
or-
need to make a motion to table.
Yeah, just table it. Yeah, well, you need to table it.
Right. So I make a motion that we table 8.3.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Kenyon,
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Cincioni.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that 4-0.
Vice President Zimmerman, let me just interrupt. So, Dr. Mahorn, Mr. Dangerfield, do you guys have what you need? Is there any?
Yeah, I think so. Do we know when the next board meeting?
Well, they're going to talk about it. There's probably a board meeting next week, so we could get these things finalized for employees, so.
Okay, we're going to move on to 8.4, which is discussion consideration to approve contract and work agreement language of notice of appointments for SY 25-26. Dr. Mahorn.
Vice President Zimmerman, members of the board, this is the language for all of the other positions that are not teaching positions. This one, I can tell you, the only changes were dates. We didn't change, because they don't have liquidated damages or anything. So if you look at the comparisons, they were just dates that were changed on all of these.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, I have a couple questions. In the administrator contract, it states that the board policy will dictate how much vacation time each administrator gets. Are all administrators 12-month employees,
They are,
including APs
they are.
and coordinators?
Anyone with an administrator contract.
Okay. And then in the SLP contract, in section M.8 at the end, it says psychologist, where it should say SLP.
You said M.
M.8.
Ah, gotcha. We can make that correction.
The at-will contracts, it says they only have 2 days to sign. Is that accurate? Is that what we want? Is that typical?
Malia's answering. Do you have your micro? Oh, you don't have the mic. You got the mic.
Yes, support staff or the at-will employees get 2 days to sign.
Okay. In the administrator classified contract, and I assume it's in the certified as well, it says that we will pay membership dues, but again, that was a discussion of a cost savings. So, again, I apologize that we haven't had the discussion yet because we just ran out of time, but I feel like now we kind of have to have the discussion, at least. It's hard because we haven't had the whole budget discussion, but if we're not going to offer to pay for membership dues, then I don't feel like we can approve the contract language as that's written. So I don't know if we want to discuss that, what everybody's feeling is about the membership dues.
I would be in support of cutting that from the contract if we're looking at cost savings. It seems like an easy lift. It's great to be in the memberships, you know, have the memberships, but they're not required. I would be okay with removing that as a cost savings. If it's possible that we don't have to do that in the future because we somehow have extra money that comes from somewhere, maybe it's something we could offer up again, but it doesn't need to necessarily be in the contract as contracted language.
Let me ask Dr. Mohorn and Malia, how many classified administrator positions do we have? Classified administrator?
It's in the, just so you know, it's in the certified administrator contract too.
Oh, you said certified administrator? I'm
It's
sorry.
both.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard classified, okay. Scratch that, Malia. I'm sorry, I thought I heard classified.
I mean, are there certain organizations that we need to belong to? I don't know that much about it. I just noticed that it was in the contract. You know, is there concerns with us not paying for certain memberships for administrators?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know how many, I think about Arizona school administrators for some of our principals, but I don't know how many of our principals honestly are members of it, to be quite honest. I'm not even sure how many of them utilize that provision. I would have to check, but that's a common one for like principals is the Arizona school administrators. The classified ones I'd have to see just depending on the position, but how many utilize that provision, so that might be something again when it comes up in budget that maybe that is, we remove that. But again, we can find out how many memberships are utilized. Maybe I'm totally underplaying it, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of administrators who are.
How did
part of
you
membership.
come to the budget savings about how much memberships were?
The memberships that were just included on there didn't include these for administrators. There were other things from cabinet and district office, but not for the principals per se. But some of those were different memberships, or even our district being a member of different organizations or lobbying organizations. And that might even be a low-end number as well on some of those memberships too. We tried to have a very conservative number, so it could be even a lot higher as we really dig in.
I don't think we had any principals left to help us.
Oh, Bruce is
Not
here.
that I blame them.
Mr. Neminsky's here, though.
Mr. Neminsky,
So
putting
he
you,
is the sole.
just putting you on the spot, Mr. Neminsky, are there any, do you know the principal, are principals memberships of members of ASA? I mean, do you know?
I mean, I've seen them in the vouchers for sure. I've seen the principals belonging to the administrator in the vouchers.
I can only speak for myself. If I have it, I don't use it.
Okay.
I don't want to
Okay.
ruin it for my other 6 principals, but I don't use it and have gone without it before.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
So-
Do you know what the cost is for membership, Mr. Neminsky? Sorry. Do you know what the cost is for membership?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
I don't,
I'm-
maybe a couple $1,000s, I don't know.
I'm thinking back, it's prorated. I believe it's prorated based on salary. So I want to say it's in the neighborhood of $450 to $550. That rings a bell.
Okay, thank you. Just curious, my professional memberships are not nearly that expensive.
So, you know, if that's something we're gonna cut, then I think we need to remove it from
Yeah.
the language.
I think so.
Okay. The other thing, you know, I noticed that in the psychologist and the SLP contracts, there was like kind of just a provision about, you know, please, you know, honor your contract, like, you know, we need a suitable replacement, things like that. And it wasn't listed in the like administrator classified or administrative certified or the principal or the assistant superintendent. So I just wonder if that's something, you know, again, we're not holding any teeth to it, because
Yeah, tell me the paragraph you're looking at exactly.
I'd have to pull it up. Give me one second.
You mean to add that to the other, that similar language to other contracts?
Mm-hmm. So like in the SLP contract, it's M8.
M8. So, Dr. Mohan, do our other contracts have language like that?
They do not.
They don't.
They do not.
Okay.
In the psychologist contract, it's also M8, it's the same place.
And yeah, we'd have to change that wording, but if the board directs, there's language like that we could put in the other contracts, yeah. I mean, we could do the same and bring it back potentially next week, you know, if we have that meeting to, again, if the board directs, gives us some direction on what you have in mind, we can add that language that just emphasizes what you're talking about.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Are you all asking to add it to just all contracts? All of the contracts?
Yeah,
or-
I guess, you know, my question was, why is it in some and not in others?
If I'm giving you an honest answer, is because this has always been the contracts, and this has been the language, except for the liquidated damages that Liberty has had.
But it certainly doesn't mean,
Yeah,
you know,
doesn't have-
just because we've done it that way, doesn't mean we have to continue doing it that way.
That's,
The last sentence in the paragraph, I'm reading the psychologist one, but I'm assuming the SLP one is the same. It says, "A psychologist who resigns contrary to this policy shall be deemed to have committed an unprofessional act and shall be reported for unprofessional conduct to the appropriate licensing agency." Is that part of why it's included? Because they're licensed, like the psychologists and the SLPs would have
they do.
licensing, and so that is part of it. I'm just trying to come up with a reason why it would have been included for those two jobs, but not others.
It could be, because, for example, a classified administrator doesn't have a license.
Right.
So to have it in there, I mean, it wouldn't connect. A certified administrator has a license, but a classified administrator doesn't have a license.
Okay, that's okay. I was just, you know,
Yeah.
I was just looking at the different contracts. Before we move on, just the principal has that same membership dues. I didn't mention it.
Oh, I thought you did mention it, so I wrote it
Okay,
down.
just because it's certified, administrator certified, it just kind of,
Mhm.
there's a separate principal one. And I assume the assistant superintendent has it too, but I don't have it in my notes
I'll
for sure,
look, yeah.
so. Okay. So I think we can pass this one, right? I think we, oh,
We need to take the membership.
Yeah, do we
oh, the membership,
because
oh
they're
no,
changing
okay.
the language about the
But
membership.
that one is
so
just omitting something. I think we could put that in the motion.
Can they do?
Can
could
we
do that,
put
can't
it in
they?
the motion?
Mhm.
That would be pretty clean. I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
clean and doable.
Do you want, I'll make the motion. I know, okay. I motion that we approve contract and work agreement language of notice of appointments for SY 25-26 with the provision that in the administrator classified, administrative certified, principal, and assistant superintendent, we remove the clause about paying for membership dues. You think I'm gonna remember what I said exactly? I'm 10 for it, but. Administrator classified, administrative certified, principal, and assistant superintendent contracts, and that the language no. Okay, can you read me what you have? Okay. The language of paying for membership dues is removed. Sure. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Mr. Kenyon?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Cincinnati?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 4-0. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to 8.5, discussion consideration to approve assurances of principal and teacher contracts for SY25-26. Dr. Mahorn.
So this is what we do every year. It is the specific names and salaries for renewal for just our head principals and our teachers. And our teachers are including right now our reading interventionists and our instructional coaches that are currently in those positions, unless they have resigned. Anybody that's resigned, of course, is not on here.
But they are listed as a teacher contract
As a teacher contract,
until the board,
correct. Yeah,
you know, has our budget discussions
Yes.
and the district brings us, you know, and we have the discussions to balance the budget, that they have a place in the district. Just, we need to, you know, have the budget discussions before we can issue specific
And the
contracts.
salaries reflected in here are on the teacher's salary schedule for everyone.
Because there's a different salary schedule for RIs and
Mhm.
instructional coaches.
Mhm.
And, you know, I just think, you know, there's a lot of budget discussions that need to be had before we can approve other contracts, but I think, you know, to run a school, we need teachers and we need a principal. And so I think my question is, and I apologize that I skipped, I will absolutely come back to other people to talk, but without approving the contract language for the teachers, can we issue the contracts?
Not yet.
Okay.
But here's my question though, Mr. Dangerfield, can't they approve the names though? That, you know, is that what you're asking? Can they approve?
The question of the 15th?
So even though the contracts may not be finalized till next week,
This isn't an offer, this is just approving the names.
yes, that's what I mean, they could approve the names tonight.
If we push this off, we have to
So
have a
we
meeting
can,
for it.
we can approve the list of names tonight.
Yes.
Then on Monday, potentially, we have our next meeting. We can approve the new language in the contract, and then everything will be
Right.
set to go, because
Right.
you'll be all ready, because everything is already there.
Yes. Yes.
I did, Mr. Dangerfield, I just want to be clear that you feel like it's okay for us to approve the names.
This is not an offer, this is just identifying the people that will be provided an offer. The contract itself will be the offer, when they receive the contract.
I think we maybe should change the language in the motion, like a recommendation to issue, let me think about it.
Would it be a big issue if we just move this to the same time if we have another meeting next week? It should be before the 15th. Like we can just approve this at the same time we approve the language on the contracts.
We
And you don't
certainly,
have to worry about anything.
we certainly could.
I didn't catch that.
Moving it to the next.
He,
the one
he was
next
just saying, could it be moved if we have that
You
meeting?
can just include it in the next meeting.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, we just have to
Is
agree
that
that
what
we're,
you're suggesting, Brian?
great. So if somebody wants to make a motion to table.
Or is it just gonna be, is it gonna be tabled
Uh,
or just moved?
So just make a motion to table this until next meeting.
You have to read out the thing.
Oh,
At least the
gosh.
agenda item.
I I make a motion to table assurances of principal and teacher contracts for school year 2025, 2026, until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Mr. Kenyon?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Svencioni?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that approved 4-0. Move on to 8.6, discussion consideration to provide superintendent direction on budget priorities.
Okay.
Dr. Monroe?
Vice President Zimmerman, members of the board, this is the time, now that we had some time with Ken Hicks a little earlier, where the budget can direct myself and the staff, where the board can direct us as far as budget priorities that the board members feel as we go throughout the budget planning and bring that back to the board. Priorities that the board has to see, that the board would like to see as we recommend reductions or recommend other things, just what the prioritization is. And so I will turn it over to you guys for a discussion, and you guys can give us some direction.
Did we make a motion since it's listed as a discussion?
I kind of felt we already kind of gave some direction about not touching kids as much as possible, the instruction as much as possible, and kind of, you know, in that last meeting, I thought we had already kind of given some direction. I guess I'm not sure what we're really looking for in this.
Okay, could we pull up the PowerPoint from the study session where it talks about the FY26 budget reduction ideas
From the work study,
from the work study?
the blue one?
Yep. So I think that the reason for this was, one, you know, if we didn't finish our discussion from the work session, that this gives us an opportunity. But we didn't really talk about, you know, the administration put together some ideas. You know, I think we need to discuss if we agree with those ideas. And also, you know, what's currently being proposed, you know, that was sent to us in an update was 2.6, and we need to get to 3.6. So I still think there are some other considerations that we're going to have to make. But I think we should start with this list, and maybe specifically the one that was provided in the board update that kind of breaks it down a little bit more specifically about, you know, what are we comfortable with up here? What are we, you know, not comfortable? What we'd like to see to continue, unfortunately, the cuts, because it, you know, we don't have a balanced budget even with this.
So, you good? So I didn't make like specific, I kind of made a list of stuff I wanted them to target first.
Okay.
All right, so some stuff I have is like reduce the district and administration first, right? I want to make sure we're protecting the classrooms and the teachers. So when we're looking at stuff, keep that in mind. Protect the current class size. I don't want to make moves to make the classes any bigger. And then student safety and attendance. I don't think we should, those should be at our priorities for me.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Kenyon, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy when you're at this point and you're talking about, you know, not filling positions or cutting positions. Yeah, that's the slide I'm looking at. So, you know, each position has obviously some really good points, and they bring so much to our campuses. You know, it's hard to say which one is better over the other, because I think they all have their unique values. But it's you know, at this point, I think I agree with Board Member Svencioni that we start from the district office, we work our way in, we try not to, we minimize. I don't know that we're not going to impact, all these are going to impact the kids' instructions in some way. So, but we got to minimize that impact. So, I know the permanent guest teacher, that's been a really big one. I've been a proponent of keeping that one. I don't know if there's an option to keep that one. but I would like to see that one stay. I know that guest teachers are used in so many just get up and go positions and fill classrooms and everything. But yeah, I guess that's just my thoughts is really my direction would be just to minimize the children's instruction time and definitely safety. Our kids at school, it's better be safe, so. Yep.
Sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
I agree. I think we need to start at the district level. We need to look at administration, because as was pointed out earlier by Vice President Zimmerman, you know, we need teachers and we need principals, and the other things are great and they make the schools better, but at the end of the day, we have to have a teacher in the classroom and we have to have a principal that oversees the school. And I mean, reading through these lists and like thinking about losing psychologists and counselors and reading interventionists, it's awful. And I would hope that we could find a way around it. I don't know that we can. Unfortunately, like we're looking at a lot of money that we need to save. So starting at that higher level, at the district level, at the admin level, do we need, you know, I know one of the things that's like not replacing the communication director, right, because we can find another way around that. But it's just, sorry. It like hurts my heart a bit to talk about getting rid of those people in schools. Because as we saw earlier, like the counselors, those are the people that can make a huge impact in our students' lives. So thinking about not replacing them is really challenging, but we have to have a teacher in the classroom. And at the end of the day, that's what we have to have. So we have to keep that in mind.
Couple of thoughts that I had is, you know, just kind of going back to what I had talked about earlier with board policy, is that we need to have like a process and how we're going to evaluate these things. I'm not comfortable just saying, well, we have all these open positions, we're just not going to fill them. To me, that doesn't really evaluate the, you know, what we actually need in the district. It's almost like, in my opinion, kind of taking an easy way out. Well, these already people aren't coming back. Because then it's like, okay, 3 counselors. Okay, how are you going to redistribute the counselors across the district? We can't just say, well, the counselors that resign, they're not going to have them. You know, same thing with the psychologists or the reading interventionists. I don't feel like that's an appropriate way. I think we have to determine what our priorities are and then figure out how we're going to make the budget fit into our priorities. And, you know, I really think that we need some stakeholder input. I think for us to sit up here without our teachers and our principals and our community and our parents, you know, this is why usually budget discussions start happening in December and January. Because yeah, we're up against a time crunch. You know, we need to issue contracts and we need to do all these things, but we have to do this. I would really like to see us do it the right way. And to really be thoughtful and not just, oh, we don't have that position, because you still have to think about, well, how are you going to redistribute these positions? And I personally want us to consider either not opening Zumbro or doing it in a different way, because it, you know, on the, can you go to the next slide? I'm pretty sure it's the very next slide. Where it says the positions will be transferred from other schools, but that's not exactly true. You have to hire a principal, you have to hire office staff, you have to hire a custodian, potentially a reading interventionist. Like, all of those people aren't transferring. Those would be new hires. You know, the teacher positions, yes. And I know that there's a lot of concern about, you know, the FSB and whether we open it, but can we think of a different option? Can we put preschool there? We have a coordinator. You know, could you open with preschool and kindergarten? Could the coordinator, so that we start getting new kids moving in that want to join. You're going to have food service if you're going to have preschool, because they have breakfast or lunch, depending on, you know, what session they attend. Could we put all of our self-contained programs, our Sierra schools, over there because they have their own administrators? I just want us to think outside the box, because when Mr. Bolden presented at the last study session, he said it was about $500,000, you know, that we're setting aside for the school. And, you know, in the list that is provided, we're still only at 2.6. And that's if we do everything on this list, which I don't know that any of us are comfortable with everything on this list. We still have a whole $1 million to go, and that's just the reality. You know, I do think we need to have some study session. I don't think we can sit up here at 11 o'clock at night and make good decisions. I really think we need to have a spreadsheet, and this has been done in the past before, where Crystal sits up there and she has a spreadsheet and she adds in the dollar amount. And when we get to 3.6, then we stop. But I think we need to be able to play around with things and to see how things, but you know, we do need, there are big decisions to make. And I just want to make sure that we do it and give justice to, you know, our staff and our teachers, that we're really looking at the best way to make the cuts. So.
Got me?
Of course.
I think Loretta Zumbro needs to open. I think we need to be able to capture those kids. Now the question, I agree, we need to be creative in how it opens. You know, I think there was a number earlier thrown out that was in the single digits of what we were expecting kids to go there, and I don't think that's accurate. But I still think we could still potentially open K through 3 and see who registers. If we're gonna have it open for preschool, you might as well have it open for K through 3, as was the initial plan. And if you get 50 kids, then you know what you need a staff. If you get 300 kids, then you know what you need a staff. But I think having the option to, we'll say, capture those kids, because obviously that's gonna help us with our financial problems. That's gonna give us that increased revenue. I don't like the idea of just putting a hold on Loretta Zumbro.
We identified 4 unique positions needed for Zumbro exclusively. The principal, probably a secretary, admin assistant, a health aide, and the custodian. So those were the 4 that were unique. The other ones could be shared potentially with other campuses that are smaller, because you have a smaller population.
What about
And
food service?
Food service pays for themselves, that program does, so they would hire their own person there. So that would be 4, and I think that's why Mr. Bolden had set aside 500,000, so that might not even be close to 500,000, and then the teachers would be transferred from other schools, you know, 1 per section or wherever we are. So right now, we just identified those 4 positions that would be unique, and so you add up those salaries, it's probably close to, I don't know, maybe half, 300,000, I'm not sure, but, and then the other positions, potentially with a smaller population, we could share with a school like Liberty or other schools that have a smaller population, you know, interventionist, reading interventionist, counselor, those kind of things.
So this is an action item. So, you know, I think we've provided some direction, but I think we need to have another meeting that really dives into this, because, you know, our staff is counting on us to make the decisions, because they need to know about their contracts, and they deserve to know, in my opinion. So, you know, I think we probably could talk about the meeting in this agenda item, or is there another one?
Especially if we're talking about next, yeah, I mean, we can in this agenda item or later on, but if we're talking about a meeting next week
Yeah, we do have to table it or something.
to talk about budget and finalize these contracts, we
Okay,
could do
so
it here.
Can we talk about, you know, when the board is available to have another meeting?
I think that's at the end.
Okay.
Upcoming board meetings, 10.1.
Okay. All right. can we have a motion? Do we want to make a motion to give specific direction or priorities, or do we want to make a motion that says, everything we've talked about?
Or is
Table
there
it.
any, or, because I've tried to write down everything between all of us that all four of you have shared, or is there anything that any of you are forgetting to say? I've tried to capture a lot of the things you guys have said.
Oh, the other thing that I really would like the administration to think about too is to adjust job descriptions and responsibilities. So I feel like Mr. Hicks said this is, we're gonna have to eliminate positions, but those jobs still have to get done. And I think we are gonna need to rewrite those job descriptions before we issue contracts, because I don't feel like we should be issuing contracts to people if the job descriptions are gonna change significantly. And I think some of them are, unfortunately. There's gonna be more responsibilities. So that was just the other thing I wanted administration to consider.
Got it.
And, I just really would like us to, I feel like we need options to get all the way to 3.6. We can't stop at 2. We just have to get all the way there.
Got it. We'll work with with Mr. Hicks as well. We don't think that number will be that big, but it's great to have a bigger number. I agree.
I think this needs to be its own meeting, though. I don't think we can tag this on to the emergency meeting next week, because that has to be short. Because some people only available,
Oh, okay.
like, short in time.
Well, okay, we'll talk about it at 10.1.
But we gotta do something with the motion on this.
We do.
though.
We can table it, we could,
Yeah, we could just make a motion to table this for a later
Okay.
date, correct? Okay, I make a motion to table item 8.6 to a later date.
I second.
we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Mr. Kenyon?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Cincinnati?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that pass 4-0. Okay, 8.7, discussion consideration for the selection of the 3 board candidate names. I'm going to start again, I apologize. 8.7, discussion/consideration for selection of 3 board candidate names to the Maricopa County Superintendent Office. Dr. Monroe.
Vice President Zimmerman, members of the board, this is a time for the board to discuss and then decide whether they can come to a consensus on the top 3 names to send to the state Maricopa County State School Superintendent. Mrs. Boggs did attend. I think she attended all of the forum the other night. We had a forum with many of our candidates, and I just want to remind the board, if the board doesn't, remember we've been reminded by the office, if the board can't come to a consensus on the top 3, that we're supposed to send, regardless, we'll send all the information on all the candidates to no matter what. But if the board can't come to a consensus, then I've been told all of them will be interviewed, or that process will then be handed over to them. So now is the time for the board to deliberate, talk about that, and see if they can come to a motion. Minnie and I stand ready to let the county know tomorrow. We have until the 7th, but I also know that the board has received various feedback from the community, from the public forum, and so now is the time for the board to be able to discuss that.
Before we start, I just want to make a clarification for the public. There was some concern about the survey and how many times you were able to take the survey and things like that. So I just want to, I think you left. Oh, no, there he is. Okay. I just want to thank Dr. Sloat that he, made those corrections and provided the board with, kind of 2 versions of the data, and when all of the answers are submitted, how do the candidates rank, and then removing when multiple surveys were taken under the same IP address. And so we were able to see all of that information. And so I just want the public, I know there was some concern, and so I just want the public to know that, we were given the data appropriately. And, thank you to Dr. Sloat, who took all that extra time to make sure that we had that, and then even clarified, how when people made comments, they didn't necessarily name people, just like, oh, I really support these 3 people. And so he went through and identified all that data and what names that was tied to. So I just want to take Dr. Sloat time to thank him for that, and just, to publicly acknowledge so that people are, can be assured that, we got the information as expected.
What about spouses in multi-generational homes?
Okay, we'll go ahead with Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Dr. Sloat. It was a good survey. I know there were some bugs, and you've pretty much dealt with the bugs, so thank you. Really, at the end of the day, Ms. Shelley Boggs is going to appoint who she appoints. I know we can submit recommendations. There's one name in particular I want to see on here, and that's going to be Donnie Bond. So if we come up with 3, I'm possibly okay with that, but I won't accept one that doesn't have Donnie Bond in it, and I would rather just submit them all 7.
Ms. Schmidt.
I do want to address the thing about the multiple people in the same home. We got the information from both sets. So everybody, even all the ones that came from the same IP address and the ones that were not, we saw it in both situations. So it was accounted for. I also would like to say that we weren't talking about like 3 from the same IP address. We were talking about like potentially hundreds from the same IP address. So that's not a multi-generational home. But either way, we saw both sets of data. Just to clarify that. I have 3 people that I came up with based on listening to their responses, reading through them again. I took tons of notes last week, reading through all of the responses from the people who took the surveys and taking that all into account. Unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to agree, because the person that has been stated to be the only, has to be on the list is not on my list. So I will say that. Should I give my names, or do we not need them now?
That's up to you.
Okay, well, my list in no particular order was Anna Gutierrez, Courtney Kelly, and Ashley Wright. I thought all 3 of them gave excellent answers. Unfortunately, Miss Kelly was not able to be with us, but I did read through all of her information. The other 2 that I thought were great candidates were very poised on stage, kept to the topic, had good answers, are involved. Miss Gutierrez was incredibly professional and well educated, and just, listening to her talk, I was like, she knows what she's doing, and we need someone who knows what they're doing. So those are my top 3.
Mr. Cincioni.
Yeah, there was a lot of great candidates. I would like to see some mixed up.
I'm sorry.
I thought you said
sorry. No.
But I agree with Mr. Kenyon that I like to see Donnie Bond on there, just because it does represent multiple of the sides of the community, right? I do like Ms. Gutierrez also. I think she was a good candidate, but I like to see Donnie on there. And if we can't agree, then it's just simple, just send in everybody.
In terms of the, kind of what's been said in the candidates, my concern with Donnie and another candidate is those people ran in the election, and it was the highest turnout we've probably ever seen, over 80% in a school board race, which I think is like unheard of. And I feel like that election happened recently, and the stakeholders, gave their say. And so I'm not comfortable putting somebody forward that the voters of this district already voted to not, put into office. So, I think based on the forum, I, based my decision on people that I saw in the forum. And so those 2 other candidates that did not come to the forum, I wasn't necessarily considering them just because I didn't think they I'm not saying that, Superintendent Boggs shouldn't consider them. I'm just saying for my personal things, I didn't consider them. So based on that, I would be comfortable recommending Ashley Wright, Anna Gutierrez, and Mike Lyons based on the other criteria that I gave. So.
Like I was saying, like everybody's gonna have their opinion. Obviously,
Sure.
Donnie aligns more with my personal beliefs, and so that's what I'm supporting. Which I really, to be honest, I didn't expect us to agree on 3 names anyway. So
I would like to say that my not choosing someone wasn't even necessarily personal beliefs, but more along the lines of what Ms. Zimmerman said, that we just had an election in November. 2 of the potential candidates were on the ballot and did not get enough votes to win. And so if we're listening to our stakeholders and we're listening to our constituents, they did not vote for them. So that was more along where that was my thought process in that as well.
So I seen that comment, and it made me think. The other side of that is, why didn't the other candidates run? They received no votes from anybody. So that's how I look at that.
Yeah, I kind of was similar. People who invested their own money to run, and as we all did, it really means a lot when somebody's invested. It's easy for a nomination. It means something when you put your own money out there and you're running a campaign. And yes, Ms. Bond didn't win in that election, but she wasn't far off. And so, in my opinion, she's got the heart. She's got a lot of that. Her background is financial. We're dealing with financial issues right now. I think that she would be excellent person who can really dig into the finances portion of this and help get us some answers. And then moving forward, I think she's just going to be a great asset to the district. But again, I kind of didn't think we were going to agree on 3 names either. So I would just recommend personally that we just submit all 7.
Okay, I make a motion that we send all 7 names to the county superintendent.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Kenyon.
Aye.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Minnie's falling asleep too.
Send all 7 names to the county superintendent.
Brian.
I forgot who it was. Okay. Mr. Kenyon.
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt.
Aye.
Mr. Cincinnati.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 4-0. Okay, 8.9, discussion consideration, oh no, 8.8, I got myself. Discussion consideration of timeline for the trust policy, Dr. Monroe.
Vice President Zimmerman, members of the board, I'd like to nail down some dates with the board, kind of a timeline, so we can plan for the completion of the ASBA policy transition over to the trust. If you remember, we're sort of at chapter 4 and a half, halfway through 4 with just the first read, but I was hoping to get a timeline so that we can plan some meetings and the consultant can finish this with us. We have the ASBA policies until the end of June, so we could really target June as like a second read and an approval of the policies, but I listed some dates down, some Monday dates down that if the board wants to consider it, we don't need all of them. I would say we could probably use 3 of those dates. These are not board meeting dates, they're Mondays, they don't have to be Mondays, but Mrs. Castellano said she could probably use another hour at a minimum with chapter 4, and then chapter 5 is the meatiest one. That could be 2 or 3 hours, so that could be one special work study session, or it could be broken up. However, I added some dates here for the board to consider. I really don't like that Monday, April the 14th date, just because we have a board meeting on the 15th. But, if there was a date in March, April, and May that the board could spend some time finishing this out, we're getting there, we're pretty close. And then we could bring a lot of the revisions and stuff we brought back to a second read so that could be approved in June. That's naturally when the ASBA expires, which would be a good time. So if the board wants to look at those dates or look at your phone and kind of give us some of those dates, what you guys would think, then we can all plan, and I know the board has summer vacations and things like that coming up as well.
Can we just maybe talk about the day of the week? I know you had said when we moved to Tuesdays that this wasn't your favorite day, so do you want to do these on Mondays? Is that a better day?
Yeah, it's fine. We have to get this done. We're running out of time, so.
So do we want to do them on Mondays, or?
Yeah, Mondays work for me.
Okay,
I would,
I'm just looking at my calendar.
I would caution the 24th though of March, because that's the day we come back from spring break, correct?
Yes, I believe you're right. And then April 14th, April 15th, we have a board meeting, so I doubt the board can be here 2 nights in a row, so.
And May 26th is Memorial Day.
Good catch. So, I mean, we could do an April 7th, depending on, or what the board calendar is. We could also do an April,
And the 21st is the day after Easter, just, I don't know if
Okay.
people go out of town, I'm just pointing it out.
I'll be here.
so how is it April 7th? Do you guys want to check, Roke? How's your April 7th?
I'm good.
Chris? Mr. Kenyon? Mrs.
Yeah, I
Schmidt?
can make it work.
Okay, what about a May, I know that's the end of the year, but typically there's not a lot of stuff on a Monday night for the end of the year, but I say that without looking at school calendars, but we have a May 5th and a May 19th.
Are we skipping over April 21st?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the day after Easter, but
I'll be in town.
I'm in town, I just
I'm
was
here too.
putting it out there.
Mr. Kenyon, can you do April 21st?
Yes.
Okay, and what about those May dates? What, May 5th or May 19th align better with you? May 19th, I suspect that's probably the last week of school, I would think.
Yeah, May 5th is, I feel like there's a lot of school stuff going on, like I have something in my calendar, like, just like end of year band and just all those kinds of things. May 19th, I would think it would all be kind of wrapped up, except promotion, I assume, is going to be that week, but not on a Monday night, I assume.
Correct.
So I would be okay with May 19th.
I can do May 19th.
Mr. Cirincione, May 19th? Mr. Kenyon? Yes. Okay, so I have April 7th, April 21st, and then May the 19th. And again, if we may not even need that May date, depending on, if we spend 2 hours together each time, and we want to be able to get you guys chapter 5, so you have enough time to look at it, like we've talked about. And chapter 5 is more meaty, I've been told. I haven't really dove into chapter 5 myself yet. I'm still on chapter 4, but okay. So April 7th, Minnie, we have April 7th, April 21st, and May 19th. This is just discussion. I don't think we need a motion. I don't think there's an action on there, right?
No, there's not. Okay.
Excuse me, Vice President Zimmerman, can we just, can you just let me know what time you would like to start? 4:30?
Oh. Okay,
Thank
but
you.
now we're back to Mondays. I forgot about
Yes,
school sports.
these are Mondays, and we could switch the date. We could do a 4:30 start,
No, it's
5:30
okay.
start.
I'm okay, 4:30, 5:30.
Can we just do 5:30 in case my kid makes the baseball team? Sorry, I'll never get to see
Mr.
him.
Cirincione, 5:30? Can you do that? Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let's do 5:30, Minnie.
Thank you, Minnie. Okay, 8.9, discussion consideration to acknowledge receipt of the Auditor General's performance audit report for fiscal year 22-23 and 23-24. Dr. Monroe.
Vice President Zimmerman, members of the board, when we have our yearly audits, one of the things that's changed in the last 2 or 3 years, I think, under statute, is the board votes by a roll call vote to acknowledge the receipt of the audit. And although that's not required legally by the performance review, I asked the Auditor General's office. We presented it here as just an acknowledgement of a receipt, and so it doesn't mean an agree or a disagree. It's just a roll call vote to acknowledge that we've received the findings or the results of the audit. So we bring it here to the board so that we can follow that same practice with the performance review. It is public. It's made available on the Auditor General's website.
ready to make a motion.
Yes,
unless somebody
please.
wants to talk. Motion to acknowledge receipt of the Auditor General's Performance Audit Report for the fiscal year 22-23 and 23-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Mr. Kenyon.
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt.
Aye.
Mr. Cincinnati.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 4-0. 8.10, discussion consideration of superintendent contract revision. Dr. Monroe. Mr. Dangerfield.
Sorry. As been discussed earlier, we have now the amended contract for your approval.
Okay, and just for, transparency's sake, we are adding the, when the performance pay can be approved by the school board, between June 1st and June 30th after,
After the achievement reports have been received from the Arizona Department of Ed, student achievement reports.
So, just to ensure that, we have all the data in order to evaluate the goals of the superintendent. So if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and take a motion.
You have no questions over that? Dr. Monroe?
No, if it's what we talked about before, yeah, that I don't have any questions.
I motion to approve the superintendent contract revision.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Mr. Kenyon?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Cincinnati?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 4-0. Okay, we'll go on to 9.1, board comments on agenda topics and items for future consideration. Mr. Kenyon?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I've been asked about a couple times, and one of our contestants, Mike Lyon, he brought it up during that last meeting. I would like to kind of see if administration can get us the numbers of probably last year. I don't know if you can dig into the year before, but what I'm looking for is how many kids that weren't really ready to graduated, if that makes sense. Promoted or graduated right out of 8th grade, but versus how many were just recommended to be promoted versus they were actually met the qualifications to be promoted. And I know there's a lot of involvement in that. I know there's parents get involved, teachers have recommendations, all that kind of stuff happens, but I'm just curious what those numbers are.
Okay, let me work with Dr. Sloat on that. I think we can produce that.
Ms. Schmidt?
I don't have anything right now.
Mr. Cincinnati?
I'm good.
I just have two things, and I think that before, I would like the board to discuss whether the district should complete the risk action plan from the Attorney General, because that would involve a lot of work. I don't want to recommend that the district do that without a conversation, so I'd just like us to discuss it. And I think it just needs to show, help us find the root cause of what occurred with the budget. And then I'd also like the district to explain how they're fixing the deficiencies in the performance audit.
Got it.
Okay. We'll go on to 10.1, which is upcoming board meetings. So on here we have Tuesday, April 15th, work study session and regular board meeting. Sorry, Monday, May 13th, work study session and regular board meeting, and then June 3rd, regular board meeting. And I know there was some.
Yeah, this would be where we could talk about the meeting next week.
Okay. So there's been some conversation about, having a board work session or special meeting, a combination for us to be able, because we did not issue teacher contracts tonight, and I think we absolutely need to do that next week. But we also, want to think about our other contracts, particularly like reading interventionist contracts and instructional coaches contracts before the rest of the state issues their contract, But in order for me to feel comfortable doing that, we have to work through the budget. So,
I think we can do that. I think I'm kind of hearing two things. We can have some budget discussion, some budget priority discussion, but we'll stand ready. And again, I'm pretty sure Mr. Hicks will be able to be here because I was talking to him about a couple days where the board can have confidence where we can issue those contracts if we approve the language for all the employee groups, and be able to have that budget discussion before that. So, I mean, it sounds like two short items, but I don't know how long it would be.
yeah, I don't know how comfortable I feel having a meeting with the agenda items on there when we haven't discussed the budget. I mean, I think we need to issue teacher contracts, but I think there needs to be two separate meetings because I'm not sure how to set an agenda if we haven't discussed the budget priorities and how we're going to make the cuts. So I don't know if there's something that we can have, like a study session on Monday and then, no?
I can't.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
sorry, I'm sorry.
No, next week is really booked for me. I can make some time available on Monday, but it's gotta be like a 30-minute thing. So my initial thought when this was presented was that we can come in, I know we wanted to get contracts out, and usually that's a pretty quick thing. Obviously, nothing has been quick. So, you know, yes, we need to get the principal and teacher contracts out. And so my thought is hopefully administration can bring those contracts with that amended language in it. We can review that real quick, approve the contract. Well, yeah, approve the contracts, and the people who would be receiving them, right? The names. And I think that's really all I have time for that night. Okay. So when it comes to doing I just know how our board has been operating. A budget session is going to be a couple hours long. I don't see it being a quick thing.
No, I agree. So is there another night next week that you're able to do it or?
Next week, no. And that's where it's going to get tight.
Okay. And then it's spring break.
So what date did you say? Monday you had some time?
Monday, I have time. I don't know about the rest of the board.
For a quick meeting though, not a study session.
What, Mrs. Schmidt, Mr. Sarah, what's your Monday?
Yeah, I can make something quick on Monday.
I can do Monday.
I can do Monday, but I think the board needs to discuss about doing a budget study session then, because I don't feel like we can issue other contracts. And so now we're gonna be after spring break. So the week, sorry, I'm pulling it up again. What about the week after spring break? What is our availability?
24th to 28th.
Mm-hmm. I'm just, I can't talk.
For administration, the 24th is the day we come back from spring break. Would administration be able to have a budget study session?
We would make it happen, if that's what the board's availability is. Yeah, we would make it happen. So what would you, so what do you guys envision Monday night? What do you want us to come prepared with Monday, or are we still talking about having something Monday night?
Let's talk about, can we go down the line for that date? Okay.
I kind of said my piece here.
Sorry, it's your turn.
I've been awake since 4 a.m. So for Monday, we're just,
So this coming Monday is a
I'm
quick
available.
meeting.
Totally fine.
We're approving the contract language, the updated contract language, and the teacher contracts and the principal contracts. Okay, so now we need to move on.
Budget priority discussion.
Study session. So we have to move past spring break now because we can't meet during spring break. I mean,
I'm fine with the 24th.
My question, I guess, is, if there, if you prepare a presentation and then, the time for questions, I'm concerned about it being on a Monday again. Are you able, can we
Moving
do,
it later in the week is fine as well for me. Like, Monday doesn't.
could we do Tuesday, Mr. Kenyon?
I could potentially do Tuesday. I don't know if.
Mr. Swenson?
I should be able to move stuff around that week.
I know it's, am I missing anything,
Oh.
Mr. Dangerfield, Dr. Mahorn? I know it's late and we're all trying to process. Is there anything that comes to your mind as they're looking at a second meeting for those, for that date? I just want to make sure, I know we're all tired and it's late and we're trying to think through the schedule.
I mean, we can do it on Monday. Do you feel like administration is prepared, could be prepared by the end of next week for then us to have time to ask questions and,
Next week? Or-
if we're gonna try to do it on Monday, on the 24th, but if would you, try to prepare that presentation and, what that study session is gonna look like next week, so that we have time to look over it during that whole week and be able to ask questions, and then,
That would be my idea, because I know this year I'll be gone for spring break, so I'd like to prepare that, and then we could find the day after spring break to have that budget discussion. We could put together the stuff with Crystal. So my thought would be to have it ready for next week by the time we leave for break, so the board has it for a week and a day or a week and a few days. And then, again, Monday is a quick turnaround after spring break. We could certainly do that if that's the board's availability, but we could also do it Tuesday, Wednesday if the board wants. But yeah, I'd want to make sure you guys have time with what we prepared. So yeah, I'd want to put that, give us a week timeline to work that out for next week, make sure you guys have it.
I mean, yeah, Wednesday works for me too. It doesn't have to be on a Monday.
That's the 26th.
but then if we get into Wednesday,
Yeah, I would rather it be the 24th for personally.
okay.
Okay. I'm good either day.
If you guys are good with that.
I'm okay with the 24th
Okay.
if we feel like we can,
Yeah,
answer the questions and, I just want to make sure that we have the information we need. And then I feel like that if we hold a study session, if there are other contracts that we want to issue, if we did a quick meeting later in the week, just to issue contracts once the budget priorities are set. Because now we've passed the March 15th deadline when the rest of the state is issuing contracts. So the longer we go not issuing them, the more likely we are to lose people. But again, I'm not comfortable setting an agenda if the board hasn't discussed their priorities.
so if we have the meeting on Monday, we can get out the teacher contracts on the 15th. It's all the
Right.
other ones.
Yes, but, potentially, we're not issuing reading interventionist specific contracts on Monday, so
Yeah.
those people are potentially gonna be looking for a job, unfortunately. So I think on Monday, if we meet and have a study session, then we could have, 24 hours to call another meeting and set an agenda to issue some contracts. Because, we're not issuing APs, district staff, all kinds of psychologists, SLPs. I mean, that really makes me nervous. I don't know if we can talk about here the SLP contracts, the related services. I don't think I can.
Okay, so right now, I have a kind of a special it's a special meeting on Monday, a short one, for contracts and teacher and principal names. We don't have to do any public comment, if we could have a quick meeting. And then after, we would prepare for the board. We'd have a meeting on the 24th, but before that, we would prepare data for the board so that we could have in that meeting prioritize some of the budget items. Then perhaps after that, to your point, call a quick meeting a day or two after to approve those and get those contracts out. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay, are we good? Okay. 11.1, we will adjourn the meeting at 11:42.
Oh, I was wrong by that one too.
We were way wrong.
Well, it's not I was closer to being